Wow. It was supposed to be her comeback moment. Her big reintroduction, her sleek, rebranded, ultra-polished rise into Martha Stewart territory. But instead, it became a full-blown PR disaster. Meghan Markle's Netflix series with Love, Meghan, wasn't just a flop. It was an implosion so catastrophic that even Netflix's top brass couldn't ignore it. And when we say top brass, we mean the top. Co-CEO Greg Peters, a man so behind the scenes most Netflix subscribers have never even heard of him, stepped in personally to pull the plug. That's not just unusual, that's unprecedented, especially considering the fact that Season 2 had already been filmed. That's millions of dollars burned, gone, wiped, not because of one scandal, not because of some fleeting backlash, but because the entire thing had become such an embarrassment that even Netflix, the same platform that greenlit the ultimatum, marry or move on, had to say, enough is enough. Because from the very beginning, this show wasn't just missing the mark, it was firing in the wrong direction entirely. Test audiences didn't just dislike it, they hated it. The early feedback was blistering, emotionally hollow, narcissistic, cringe-inducing, and worst of all, a lifestyle ad with no soul. And that wasn't just from critics. Audiences echoed the same sentiments, with Rotten Tomatoes reflecting a brutal 33% critic score and a jaw-dropping 20% from viewers. That's not just bad, that's reputation-shattering. And it gets even worse, because this wasn't a show made in a rush. It wasn't a budget project. Netflix invested real money, real time, and real marketing muscle into this. But the final product felt like a staged Instagram reel stretched out into 6 lifeless episodes. And that word, staged, became the show's fatal flaw. From the phony home setting to the suspiciously pristine gardens and conveniently placed beehives, everything felt fake, manufactured, plastic. Meghan's friends seemed less like actual companions and more like extras cast from a talent agency to make her look more relatable. Viewers couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't being welcomed into her world. They were being sold a fantasy. The emotional scenes, scripted to the point of robotic detachment. Monologues delivered with the same precision as a product. Pitch. Vulnerability replaced with vanity, sincerity drowned out by soft lighting, expensive candles, and awkward smiles. And behind the scenes, it was apparently just as chaotic. Sources close to the production described Meghan as a creative tyrant. Every decision, no matter how small, had to go through her. Font choices, camera angles, the way a tomato sat on a kitchen counter. She overrode producers with decades of experience. She demanded constant rewrites, and if something wasn't perfect, it was redone, and redone again. This obsessive micromanaging didn't just stall the process, it bloated the budget beyond belief. What started as a $12 million investment swelled to $18 million. Delays piled up. Crew members grew frustrated, and execs at Netflix began to panic. Because Meghan wasn't just trying to make a series, she was trying to launch a lifestyle empire. This was supposed to be her Goop moment, her Martha Stewart 2.0 debut. The show was meant to seamlessly tie into her new brand, American Riviera Orchard, complete with jam jars, stylized home goods, and curated elegance. But instead of launching a wellness empire, it highlighted just how disconnected she's become from the average viewer. Critics blasted the brand as confused and hollow. No clear product line, no secured trademarks, no identifiable message. Just a collection of expensive-looking things with no emotional connection to the people she hoped would buy them. It came off less like a passion project and more like a rich celebrity playing house. And perhaps most damning of all, there was no heart, no real emotion. Meghan's show was marketed as intimate, raw, and vulnerable. But what viewers got was the opposite. Glossy monologues that sounded rehearsed, stiff conversations with supposed friends like Mindy Kaling, and an overwhelming feeling that every tear, every laugh, every pause was carefully calculated for maximum brand appeal. The entire thing felt performed, not lived. And because of that, viewers didn't feel moved. They felt uncomfortable. Multiple reviewers even admitted to turning off episodes halfway through, not out of boredom, but because the artificiality was just too much. And once that word gets out, once the narrative shifts from misunderstood Duchess to image-obsessed control freak, Hollywood starts to take notice. and fast. Spotify had already backed away from Meghan after her podcast failed to live up to expectations. But this time, Netflix followed suit, and not quietly. Her future projects are now being quietly shelved. Industry insiders, once curious and hopeful, are now whispering about how high maintenance and high risk she is. Behind the polished brand is a woman who's now seen as a magnet for drama, but not for success. For years, Meghan and Harry were able to hold on to their unique selling point, royal flair with a rebellious edge. But with love, Meghan ripped that illusion wide open and exposed just how contradictory that branding had become. They left royal life for privacy, yet every step they've taken since has screamed exposure. Streaming deals, podcasts, documentaries, Instagram-ready branding, it's all been about being seen. And while that's not inherently wrong, the inconsistency has started to erode public trust. Instead of a carefully controlled rebranding, the show ended up feeling like one long PR stunt. And worse, it looked like one too. Audiences began asking, who is the real Meghan Markle? And unfortunately, the show failed to answer that question. Instead, it solidified the belief that there is no real Meghan behind the lens, just a carefully curated persona trying to win public favor. And if you thought her core supporters would stick around, think again. Even her most loyal followers started to question her authenticity. Comment sections, once flooded with glowing praise, became battlegrounds of doubt. Her relationships on screen felt superficial. Her public statements didn't line up with past interviews. Even family members, like her half-brother, began publicly challenging the accuracy of her personal backstory. And with every contradiction, every overly rehearsed moment, her relatability slipped further and further away. She didn't look like someone inviting us into her life. She looked like someone inviting us into a commercial for a life she wished we believed she had. And that's where the cracks really start to show, not just in Meghan's brand, but in her identity. Because with love, Meghan wasn't just a show. It was a calculated attempt to pivot into a completely new chapter, a reinvention, a signal to Hollywood, to audiences, and maybe even to herself that she wasn't just Harry's wife or the ex-royal turned podcaster. She was a mogul, a visionary, a tastemaker. But the problem with branding is, once the audience senses it's all surface, they start digging, and what they found beneath the glossy production was nothing. No substance, no vulnerability, no depth, just product. Placement disguised as personality, and scripted moments dressed up to look spontaneous. Because of this, even viewers who wanted to root for her found themselves pulling away, not because they hated her, but because they couldn't connect with her. And in the world of modern celebrity, that disconnection is a death sentence. Hollywood thrives on two things: charisma and consistency, and Meghan's show failed on both fronts. One insider put it bluntly, "You can't fake intimacy anymore. The audience is too smart." The backlash wasn't just about poor editing or awkward pacing. It was about the feeling that everything had been manipulated, that every smile was practiced, that every shot was filtered through a brand strategy first and human emotions second. It's the kind of feedback that doesn't just hurt your ego, it damages your future. And the fallout came fast. Netflix didn't just cancel season 2, they scrubbed any upcoming content connected to Meghan off their development slate. One minute she was a key part of their content push, and the next, she was quietly pushed out the door. But the collapse didn't stop there. With the failure of the show, the American Riviera Orchard brand was left exposed, and not in the way Meghan intended. What was supposed to be a soft launch into a multi-million-dollar lifestyle empire now looked more like a Pinterest board come to life. Pretty, yes, but empty. People asked, "What are you actually selling? Candles, jam, vibes?" There was no messaging, no hook, no actual product, and worst of all, no relatability. In a time where audiences crave authenticity, Meghan's entire rollout felt like a billionaire's hobby project, polished, expensive, and completely out of touch with the very consumer she was trying to reach. Now here's where it gets even more brutal, because this failure wasn't just a bad business move, it's triggered an identity crisis. The very foundation of Meghan and Harry's post-royal narrative was built on the idea of reclaiming their voice, controlling their story. But the more they tried to control it, the less believable it became. And ironically, by trying to show the world a curated version of her true self, Meghan only managed to convince people that she had something to hide, that the real her wasn't strong enough to carry a brand, that behind the camera-ready, lighting and scripted vulnerability, there was no real emotional connection. And let's be clear, the damage isn't just reputational, it's strategic. Spotify cut ties, Netflix pulled the plug, and any goodwill from early post-royal interviews or Oprah specials has now been replaced by suspicion and skepticism. Executives no longer see Meghan as a valuable media asset. They see a liability, someone whose name guarantees headlines, but not success. And in a town like Hollywood, where your last failure is always louder than your last hit, that perception is devastating. She's now being spoken about in the same breath as cautionary tales, not comeback queens. What's even more telling? The silence. Meghan hasn't addressed the backlash. Netflix hasn't tried to spin it. No one's defending the show or explaining what went wrong. And in the world of crisis PR, that kind of silence speaks volumes. It suggests there's no recovery plan, no counter-narrative, just quiet damage control while the world moves on. And if that's the case, it might be the clearest sign yet that Meghan's media run has hit a dead end. But here's the part that really stings. This didn't have to happen. Meghan had the audience. She had the platform. She had the momentum. People were curious. People were ready to support her. All she had to do was be real, vulnerable, honest, even flawed. Instead, we got a brand launch disguised as a confessional, and the audience saw right through it. Because no matter how beautiful your lighting is, or how perfect your kitchen looks, people can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. And once you lose that trust, it's nearly impossible to win it back. So what now? Where does Meghan go from here? Can she recover? Can she rebrand again? Or has the curtain finally been pulled back too far to return? Hollywood loves a redemption arc, but only if it feels real. Only if the comeback is rooted in truth, not spin. And that's the million-dollar question now. Will Meghan finally show us something real? Or will she fade into the background, remembered, not for what she tried to say, but for how painfully hard she tried to sell it? If you made it this far, I want to hear what you think. Was Meghan set up to fail? Or was this all a product of her own branding gone too far? Let me know in the C. Comments below, I'm reading all of them. And if you want to stay in the loop with all the latest celebrity stories, scandals, and unexpected flops, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This saga's far from over, and I'll be here to break it down piece by piece.